It is customary for people to say, and sometimes even conservatives to say, "Well, I don't like Joe Biden. I didn't vote for Joe Biden, but he's the president, and I'm rooting for him to succeed." Well, I'm rooting for him to fail, and I'll explain. There's some really good news on this front, but before I get there, I do want to make a correction from the podcast yesterday. In talking about the dividedness of America, I talked about a majority of Republicans who say, yeah, maybe it's time to secede, and a substantial minority of Democrats, 41%. And then glibly, because my brain must have temporarily shut down, I added the two numbers and goes, that adds up to 90. That was obviously a simple math mistake. I want to acknowledge these mistakes up front, correct them. So there we go. I misspoke. Now, back to Joe Biden. Seems like the American people are giving Joe Biden an F. Even as crowds around the country, all over the place at different types of sports games, are giving him the big FU. It's kind of fun to watch. I mean, I don't approve of the word, but the sentiment is coming out of just public frustration and just a desire to sort of hit back at this guy. Now, the good news I'm talking about comes from the Quinnipiac University National Poll. This is one of the sort of standard pollsters, and now, of course, whenever I talk about a poll, I should strike a note of caution. People will say to me, I know, hey, Dinesh, the polls are notoriously unreliable. The polls are notoriously biased. And by the way, the Quinnipiac poll is a very liberal poll. This is a liberal polling group. And so I would say, yeah, it is biased, but biased how? Well, when you say polls are unreliable, they're not unreliable in all directions. They're unreliable in one direction. They always fall on one side of the aisle. So in other words, what they do, they're consistently wrong in overestimating the support of the Democrats. And what that means is that if these poll results are right, Biden's situation is even worse than the Quinnipiac poll itself would lead us to believe. So I think this is a very interesting poll. It's a poll of 1,326 U.S. adults surveyed in early October this month. Very small margin of error. And here's the good news. Biden has a 38% approval rating. 38% approve, 53% disapprove. He's hit the lowest rung since his presidency, and I think he's going to go even further down, probably to zero. Obviously, when I see these numbers, one question that runs through my mind is, who's the 38%? Who thinks that the crazy uncle coming out of the basement with his staccato outbursts is doing a great job? Well, the American people as a whole do not think that. This is, again, a poll that breaks it down on the issues. And this is very illuminating for Republicans as we kind of gear up for the midterms next year to know where exactly Biden is most vulnerable. So here we go. On the coronavirus, Biden actually has relatively even support. 48% approve, 50% disapprove. Now, there's not one category in which his approval is more than a disapproval, but at least in coronavirus, he's almost at a tie. The economy, 39% approve, 55% disapprove. His job as commander-in-chief of the military, 37% approve, 58% disapprove. Taxes, 37% approve, 54% disapprove. Foreign policy, 34% approve. I mean, think about this. To get 34%, you're losing a lot of Democrats, because if you divide the country right in half, you would expect that one half would be by and large critical, so we're not surprised by that alone. But you think the Democrats would be behind Biden, but clearly he's losing independents. He might even be losing some Democrats. Taxes, as I said, 37% approve, 54% disapprove. Foreign policy, 34% approve, 58% disapprove. Immigration, 25% approve, 58% disapprove. And the border, 23% approve, 67% disapprove. So what this shows you is that immigration, the border, this is the number one issue in which Biden is extremely vulnerable. Now, by and large, when the Democrats picked Biden, the idea was, well, people may not always agree with him, but they like him. They identify with him. He's a calm, rational leader, unlike Trump. But what's interesting is as this poll goes down into Biden's personal traits, you see that he's getting an F there too, and perhaps an FU there too. He cares about average Americans. Now, again, this is the only one on which Biden is running in about a tie. Half of the people say yes, half of the people say no. And I think this is really where, as conservatives, we need to work, because I don't think Biden does care about average Americans. That was his point about, it's been 5 days. Why are you talking about Americans we left behind? So what? Biden gives you this idea that ultimately, he's just one of these like cranky, angry old men where he's basically said, I've had life, I'm done with life. And now it's like me, me, me. I don't really care what anyone thinks. What I like about this, Biden is honest. 44% say yes, 50% say no. Obviously, the 50% are right. Biden has good leadership skills. 41% yes, 56% no. And this is great. Is the Democratic administration competent in running the government? 55% no, 42% yes. So to be at 42%, that means that you may have most of the Democrats, but you've lost pretty much all the independents. Now, another silver lining, or at least another bright light in all this, is we sometimes think like young people are left-wing. They've been kind of propagandized by their professors, and all of this is to a degree true. But when you look at, I was fascinated as I dug into the results of this survey, you find that it breaks it down. It breaks it down into, and now I'm going to give you just a couple of results from just adults 18 to 34. So this is the younger cohort. Do you approve of the way Biden is handling his job as president? 38% approve, 53% disapprove. I read the wrong number. 36% of young adults approve, 48% disapprove. Do you approve of Biden's handling of the economy? Young people, 35% approve, 55% no. Foreign policy, 31% approve, 55% no. And then finally, the border, 20% approve, 64% disapprove. So the young people are even more hardcore in bashing Biden on immigration. Now, one thing I do find strange is the way the Biden administration appears blithely indifferent to these results. They are brazenly unconcerned. You get no sense that they're calibrating how their policies are being received, that people are pushing back, that there's parental resistance, there's public outcry, it's reflected in public opinion itself. It's almost like these guys go, you know what? We've got the system fixed. We've got the rules of the game rigged. We control the election process. We control the media. We can impose digital censorship. We have the FBI. If necessary, we can call out the military. It's almost like the attitude of a ruling class. We are the rulers. You are the ruled. You don't know what's good for you. If you don't like us, that's because we're giving you bitter medicine that you don't want to swallow. It's the aristocratic attitude that doesn't care what the peasants think. The basic idea is the same one as Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake.